So the six-step process, and I think this is very simplified. We have a lot of experience in it. It allows us to operate these processes very efficiently at the county level. But for all intents and purposes, I'll just run through them. So I think you break these down by slide, don't you? And this will maybe, yeah, why don't you come back to this one? So the first step is to engineer your story. You deal with this twice a month. You deal with it every day as commissioners, but you have a lot of both opportunities and problems in the county to deal with all the time. We need to condense that and distill it down to what's relevant to this opportunity for you. But it is just exactly that. What are the needs and the focus of the county in this respect that will guide this process through? Now, I want to stop here a second with the five of you and express one thing that's absolutely most important about this phase: the goal setting. It's a little tougher to do, but the earlier you make some decisions about what are some of the more prevalent and prominent dents you want to make in these efforts in the county, the better the rest of the process is going to run. And so if that is that, tackling transition scenarios for the fishery environment, dealing with that road work, whatever it is, the earlier that you can come to consensus, and we'll come to consensus on what those goals are at the back end of this process, the project solicitation and criterion review and ranking process is going to go much smoother. If you invert that, which some people do, it gets a little clunky to try to figure out in the end. How to best compartmentalize the best options for you. Ultimately, the statute and the controls within these resources can never be removed from you. So everything is advisory to you, but you make the final selection, and that's what we're doing. Okay. The second step is to establish the selection criterion. So to follow that kind of bouncing ball, once we array the anatomy, if you will, of the county and look at where it's healthiest and where it's least healthy with you, and you set down some tenets of structured objective or goal setting, then we want to look at when we get to the process of actually inviting solutions. I don't like to think of them as projects, but you invite the solution set as to how to move that game forward, the projects, the proposals in. We run for you, with you, a scoring rubric or a scoring criterion set to basically be able to weed through that. Last night I was in Escambia dealing with the resulting 124 projects that came into the project portal as a consequence of their very same system. And this is where this scoring criteria basically wells to the top the best candidates, not the selected set. So that's what we use the criterion scoring for. We run this process absolutely, completely transparently with you, for you. We have a web-based portal program, technology that operates on the web for you. We will open the project portal, allow your community at large to submit the projects if that's the process that you choose to run. That may not be the process you choose to run. But either way, you have to ingest the projects, project proposals into the model, and then ultimately you see here where we run in public workshops. Okay. Assist and advise in the ranking. This is where Dewberry, you anticipate endpoints, and then you only know those endpoints when you get to them. Once you start looking at the kind of solicitation and the result from the solicitation, your coordinator, Alan, as I understand it, which is a wonderful selection, by the way, I just put on the table, will guide us through assisting in the process of welling those project proposals by ranking and criteria and adjustment to the top. And then we prepare the final MYIP for your submission to Treasury. It should be pointed out that this, by statute and by rules setting and adoption, requires a 45-day public review at the end of the process. Okay. Now back me up to that schedule. I apologize, we should have put that slide at the end. So when you look at the process modeled with high efficiency, and really the only way we could get to this endpoint is the experiences that we've already had, and resting on how we can both anticipate and rebound from what will likely be changes or things we'll have to deal with that are experimental. We run this in approximately a 12-month cycle to get to the end of the point of having your multi-year implementation plan for your review, your concurrence, your approval, and ultimately submission to the public, and then finally to Treasury. Now what this sets up, in case this has not been brought up before, is you are proposing to Treasury an allocation that is not cast in stone, but it requires approval. An allocation of how you would anticipate using your resources at the project level. It sets up a blueprint. It does not in and of itself get you those resources. That does not happen. It gets you access to those resources. After that, Treasury will accept a project application for each one of those approved projects. And that's the control window they put on it. So it's a multi-step process to draw down your resources that are parked in the account for you. Okay.
Let me just, I hammer on one point, but when the $23 million popped up on the screen, I don't want people to be thinking, man, we've got that to play with right now. Again, it's over a 15-year period. That's because time the U.S. Treasury will only allocate projects when money is in the account. Mm-hmm. So we don't have $23 million there now. We have about $3 million there now based upon the Transocean settlement.
Right.
And so unless the Treasury allows, and I'm not recommending they do this, but unless the Treasury allows counties to bond money, then your $23 million will be spent out over a longer period of time. So, I know the eyes popped open when $23 million, man, we're going to knock it dead. That's over 15 years. That's less than $2 million a year if you look at it that way. I mean, it's a long time.
Question.
Yes, sir.
How many projects do you allow you?
I'm sorry?
As many as we want to submit, but admittedly, we have to have money for it. I mean, we could have, 1,000, $100,000 projects or whatever. I mean, there's no criteria. It's your decision ultimately what you want to submit. There's no minimum, no maximum number of projects.
Correct.
I think what will happen in the process, Commissioners, that we will look at sort of areas of concern, as he said, areas that you want to solve. And using the Bay as an example, okay, that's an area you want to look at, but we are required to do other things. Economic development is an example. We must spend a certain amount of money on economic development. We must spend a certain amount of money on infrastructure. So we cannot dedicate all the money to one area. We are required to have some projects in a variety of areas.
Question, have those percentages been set about infrastructure, environmental, or economic development?
There is, and I'll do this openly, there is possibly you're bleeding over to two different allocations. You have no prior set percentages here at all.
No, but you need to have, you can't not do some project. I mean, you need to spend some money in infrastructure, correct?
No.
You do not need to?
No. And you don't have to spend any money, here lies the rub between special interest groups. You don't have to spend any money on environment in this group either. So this is where you are. You're empowered, and with that empowerment comes accountability, obviously. No, in this particular pot, you're actually lending over to allocation, and some of those are not as finite as put down, but allocations in the state expenditure plan. So previously in the state expenditure plan, that was going to be thought of as environment only.
Right.
And they opened up the infrastructure allocation window. And that one would not go all to infrastructure. But in this one, within the eligible classes, there are 11 eligible classes of spending. You are not binded one way or the other in that allocation. Okay.
Let me just say, Brian, let me ask you a question. Do you see this $23 million changing at all with anything that may come down the pike?
Under no circumstances.
Under no circumstance.
When that consent decree is signed, that money belongs to Franklin County.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it will be, and then I really want to reemphasize this. It is so unique in its structure that if we honestly don't at least help you make $50 million out of that, we've collectively failed. Okay.
The big challenge will be the Triumph money, where I think that is open for some alteration.
Well, and you see you know, we have experienced a couple of things that's happened in the process with the consortium and stuff like this, and things are starting to try to change what the original format of all this was originally supposed to be, and it kind of gets me worried because I want to know exactly how much money we're gonna have in the pot, guaranteed that this board and the people of Franklin County can make a decision on what we're gonna do to move forward to help our people, whether it be jobs or housing or whatever. And, you know, I'm glad to see that you're saying this is guaranteed, stomped down, drop dead, 23 million.
Belongs to you. Now, if I may take one,
We got it on record too. We've got it on record.
if I may take one, and I think this is where Alan is trying to get you also ready to focus on. There are at least 4 readily in play pots of money, okay? And so that would be the natural resources damage assessment
Which we're
component
involved in
of
already.
Restore. Yes. That would be the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation distribution from the original Transocean settlement.
Which we've gotten some of that also for sea turtles.
You have some of that.
Yeah.
That money has not been anywhere near fully allocated.
That's correct.
Okay, so, and then you have the 2 pots that we referenced up here, both the state expenditure plan and and what's really called the council pot, for all intents and purposes, but it's the impact component. The reason that we need to move aggressively to get your storyline in shape is that those are competitive arenas. And you're going to be most competitive in those arenas when you have a story to tell. The declining fishery, impact on jobs, impact on economy, your infrastructure, be that water and or other. All of those things need to be brought a little bit more to the forefront so that, Commissioner Sanders, when you're in that consortium debate, it's not just about allocation percentages, it's about impact. And that helps guide that discussion.
We've had some dicey, as you know,
Yes.
you all been there. We've had some dicey meetings lately, and I look forward to having some more because as we progress with the process, it's going to get more and more. So.
It is going to get, and your term is, I think, very accurate, dicey.
Dicey.
So,
Can't we pay Alan out of this resource money, out of this here?
Well, I'll jump to that. There's 2 things, and you may have some action items. We have 2 things I'm looking at. One, go ahead and name some names to our board. We talked about it last time, name some names to the board. Talk to the city of Apalachicola and City of Carabel. We have a City of Carabel representative here, and let them kind of know what's going on. And then 2, yes, we've written into this planning grant, which funds them, a part-time restore coordinator position. So I'm interested in doing that for you all. It's a part-time position to help create the multi-year implementation plan. That's the purpose of that. That's the extent of that thing. And yes, so I would get, if you all want to do that, I would get paid out of that. Save your tax dollars, let me be paid out of that.
Right.
If I might, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
You know, it concerns me with doing the multi-year implementation plan. I understand what the goal is and why it needs to be done. Well, you come up with a 15-year plan. What if things change in 5 years? The situation in this county changes. The money needs to go to a different place.
then you'll amend it.
Because, I mean, because that concerns me when you try to plan out 15 years and we don't know what's going to happen with our oyster industry. There's a lot of unknowns. All 5 of us may not even be here in 5 years. I mean, you don't know. Things change. People's priorities change over time. And it concerns me where, you know, originally, I helped draft the Restore Act, lobbied on behalf of this board in D.C. and everywhere else, and I know a lot about it. Commissioner Sanders knows a lot about it. But, you know, originally I wanted to have a nest egg back there, say 10 years from now, if our oyster industry failed again, I wanted to have the ability to access some money rather than begging for money like we've had to do the last 4 years up until this settlement, to be able to restore that. You know, so it concerns me when you go out 15 years creating a plan and things change in the real world every day. And I'm glad to hear that we can change that multi-year implementation plan. And because, you know, it concerns me when you're sitting here talking about $23 million and it sounds like a lot of money, but it's not. And I understand the part of being able to draw down other funds and using these $23 million in certain categories. if I'm not mistaken, if you wanted to do infrastructure, as was asked earlier by Commissioner Watson, Restore Act limits the amount of money that can be used for infrastructure to 15%.
Not in this allocation.
Not in this allocation.
Not in this allocation.
Okay.
Let me ask one question too.
Ours is gonna change in 15 years and being a secret
Oh, absolutely.
business.
I mean, so,
Yeah.
you know, it
Mr.
concerns me to sit here and go over a year of trying to draft up a multi-year implementation plan and when we know things are gonna change.
Well, can
Mr.
we,
Chairman, can I address that one issue? Under the Restore Act, there is no time limit in which you have to spend this money. I mean, there's an allocation where they'll be funding your money over a 15-year period, but you don't have to spend it in 15 years. So if this board wanted to not spend dollar for dollar as your money becomes available and you wanted to hold back some of that money, you can do so because you don't have a time period in which you have to spend it. So
Well, that-
you could hold back a certain amount of money as this board would choose for those potential future emergency circumstances as you want to, bearing in mind that all of the interest on that money is going to always be retained by the federal government. You never, this board will never accrue any interest on those dollars. Once those dollars are funded, that is it. There will be no interest paid on it.
Attorney Schuler is correct. You will accrue the funds by increment each 15 years. You have, a project will never be submitted for final consideration and finally allocation of a grant in terms of funding until you release it. So your controls are profound in terms, and by any other term, the terminology is adaptive management. Yep. The other reason for going and following, and you may not follow it, I mean, and your plan may show that, you may not follow a 15-year model, but to gain access and make yourself real to those other funds, you have to make yourself real, that you're committed, that if you're going to move down a path, you're anticipating moving down that path if you want to glue those other resources together. In the final analysis, it is adaptive management, and I'm be honest with you, you're more than likely, and everyone's going to experience this, because if you're getting out on the edge, well, the edge sometimes comes with, I don't mean the edge in the wrong way, but the edge sometimes comes with not the result you expected. So in that particular regard, you don't want to do any more of that, so you'll chop that off at the knees.
Is it also true that a lot of these projects need to coincide with the Gulf Coast restoration, the bigger projects being developed by the feds? I understand that they didn't want a lot of redundancy, so they want to make sure what you're doing here kind of matches with what the big plan from the big Gulf Coast Restoration Council and what they're trying to implement. And,
Well,
and again, that helps you relate as it
does.
refers to drawing down funds from different pots of money because we're all on the same page. Is that not correct?
Yes, it is, sir. And so the way that you put that was, will they reverse that? I think it lies in your hands to bait that. In other words, you're using a definition of Franklin County and why it would result in something more than Leon County in a particular area, in the competition of limited resources being allocated by the state level of those funds. You need the capacity for the project to have definition or the program or the attempt to change. Then those funds are not allocated, by the way, any faster than yours. They also are allocated to the state over 15-year cycles. So you're having these cycles come together where let's suppose you make amazing strides in some of the experimentation with bringing your shell fishery back in year 4. Well, you're going to see a lot of attention given as to how to expand your success down the road there.
And basically what this all amounts to is it's going to be very complicated.
It's going. I would like to tell you it's not. That would be a bald-faced lie. It is going to be very complicated.
This has been our way to this point.
Question, Mr. Chairman. From a project when I first put in, how much time we looking at before we get a final approval?
So I need to take your question in context of this. The projects that will be put in are candidates.
Right,
And then from that, you'll winnow down a subset of those.
right.
And that is an expression, because you have a 15-year payout, that is an expression of how Franklin County would propose to move forward. And Treasury adopts that and they approve that plan, okay? So as Alan pointed out, you have X amount of funds in the bank right now.
What I'm
You-
saying,
so the-
if approved,
It's somewhat unknown.
going through the process.
All right. We're hoping to, in the plan we have at the Dewberry's later, we hope to have our multi-year plan submitted to Treasury by December 2016.
Yes.
Okay, and once they approve that, then we can be submitting projects. So at the earliest, local projects, local dollars won't be seen here until 2017.
Okay.
And how Treasury actually treats, with the exception of the planning grant process, which is also, anyway, how Treasury then treats the process they've set up to receive the application for the grant and then get it out, and what that time period is an unknown at the moment. Okay? So there's an old adage, thank God you don't get all the government you pay for at the federal level. So it applies here.
I mean, I said, we get our stuff in January of 2016, not January, I'm sorry, December 2016, yeah, so yeah, January, right. The earliest we could see things is sometime in 2017, but since we don't know the timeline Treasury to turn these over, since they've turned 0 over at the time, now they've approved 0 projects anywhere on component 1, it's just unknown.
A lot of things can, like I was telling Smokey, a lot of things can change between now and then.
But not your 23 million.
Well, I'm telling you, I know. Been sitting on this board for 18 years, and from the time I sat here in 1998 until today, a lot of things have changed. So we're gonna be going through a lot of changes, and whoever sits on this board, whether it's this board or whoever, is gonna have to be up on their money on this stuff. Because, it's a lot. And don't you think somebody else ain't ahead of us trying to figure out, and they've already figured out what we hadn't figured out yet.
We seen that at the last meeting.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to tell you. I'm trying to be nice about it.
Yeah.
But,
One more question as it relates to the multi-year implementation plan. During this process, you will be looking at different projects that you want, goals you want to accomplish. Will you be receiving input from the public on project presentation and all that?
You want to answer that? You want me to?
Well, go ahead, but not till the end, and we're gonna create our structure first.
So you're just creating in this multi-year plan broad goals and not specific projects?
No, sir, you're going to have both.
You're gonna have what?
You're going to have both.
You're gonna have both.
Right.
So then if things change, you're gonna have people that have submitted projects that they thought were gonna get funded now that, and the county commission says, oh, we got another high priority here we got to do. So some of these projects that are being submitted to implement this multi-year implementation plan could actually not happen. Then you're gonna have people in the public mad because this one's project got approved and funded, and this one that was done 12 years ago, now that we're into year 13, that project doesn't get done because the goals and the objectives have changed and the priorities have changed for the county. That is what I'm saying concerns me about implementing this multi-year implementation plan. As things change and people has already submitted projects and they don't get funded, then whoever's sitting up here is gonna get blasted because their particular project didn't get done. And I'm not saying it's bad for you, I'm just saying, I know this is the way we gotta go, don't get me wrong. But I'm putting it out there for the public that just because you submit a project, if things and priorities change for this county and whoever might be sitting here at the time, that just because you submit one and it's put into the multi-year implementation plan, doesn't mean it's actually gonna happen at the time it's supposed to, or happen at all. So the public needs to understand this, and again, that's what concerns me about the whole multi-year implementation plan is raising people's expectations and then they're getting dropped off on the sidewalk 10 years later. Because things have changed and priorities have changed and things have changed in this county. So it's gonna be very complicated and it's gonna,
One of the earlier,
it could get dicey for the 5 people that might be sitting here on that particular year.
it is.
because one of the topics of a year or so ago at the consortium, one of the topics, the presentation was managing your expectations, because that's almost as important as the outcome. You gotta keep people realistic about how this process works, because Commissioner Parrish, you're right, things do change, and someone may be in the lineup, and we say, well, this is either it's not working out the way we thought, or this is a more high priority, and yes, so people are going, there could easily be shifts, and we have to understand that going in, that this is not a fixed document, that if things are changing or work out different, then we'll have to make our changes to our
But I think the public's expectation is if their project is implemented into this this plan and their goal and objectives implemented in this plan, then they're gonna be expecting it, as we know as locally elected officials.
Well, I applaud you for pointing out that governance challenge right up front, and you're right. There is zero way to take that complexity off the table and possibility. So, my only answer to that is working with you, for you, and yourselves, been very bold in this conversation, is just to keep it on the table. Now, everyone will hear a different story, or people will hear a different story, but just keep it clearly on the table.
Keep it real.
Keep it real.
Don't count your bitter to the hatch. That's the best way to do it.
Well, commissioners, as I said before, we are pleased to be here to help you through that complexity, and I promise you, Chairman, I won't make it nearly as complex in the future presentations.
Have a gentleman, yes, sir.
No, Alan, you're not gonna get no money.
Thank you very much, and I will definitely lower the microphone. Thank you very much, Mr. Griffith. Alan Pfeiffer, Concerned Citizens of Franklin County. And excellent presentation, and I understand the process the best I've heard through this. I very much share Commissioner Parrish's concern about process here and not getting locked up. I hear that we've got our $23 million locked up. It's only a question of when you want to release it. What I also heard is that there's competitive pots, and do we as a county have enough people and enough management to pursue both goals aggressively at the same time? Is next year going to be an intensive period where we're going to have to go after the competitive pots, and if we don't accomplish that, we've lost that money forever, versus the $23 million that's already set aside? Management-wise, how are we going to be able to get involved with all these different pots, put our proposals together, and also address the pots of the $23 million with all the various things that we have to accomplish? Do we have fixed deadlines for the $23 million, like putting in this, doing this report that's due by the end of next year? Or can we devote more of our resources to the competitive pots next year that may not be there in 2017, 2018? Is there enough, are the competitive pots enough money, large enough to warrant a focus on that next year, perhaps as the number one thing we should try to accomplish?
Let me ask that, sort of, part of our contract with Dewberry is they are helping us in these other pots. That is part of their responsibility, because this has to go in tandem. As Brian said, we in order to show a presence in these competitive pots, we have to have a plan saying these are the things we want to accomplish. So they have to go in tandem, and Dewberry is very much aware of that, and they're working with 8 other counties that are very much aware of the interests are in the regional area. So they are our best ally in this whole process.
So they carry most of the water.
Yes.
For the county.
Yes.
So it's not something that's going to overwhelm the county.
Yes.
With responsibilities and duties.
And the competitive pots, Alan, as he stated earlier, they're paid off in over a 15-year period also. So, as far as them being able to expend that money today, they're just like us. They're only going to get so much each year. Now, granted, they get quite a bit more than we do, but as we move forward with this multi-year implementation plan, the whole goal is to align some of our objectives and goals with some of these different pots of money you're referring to, and being able to leverage matching funds from them with our money and using our money as matching funds. As he said, trying to turn this $23 million into $50 million. Absolutely. By matching different funds from Department of Commerce to these different competitive pots. And there's a number of different ways of doing that, and that's what he was trying to say earlier.
Do the competitive pots get decided once and for all early on, or is that over a 15-year period? Thank you very much.
Don't we need to vote Alan in today to over?
Well, I would, with the two things that we need to get going, one is submitting the multi-year implementation plan planning grant, which involves paying them and involves creating some money to pay a restore coordinator. So yeah, I'm gonna recommend you all do that this morning. Now I'd be the restore coordinator. And that'll get me paid in a different way than county tax dollars. And that'll also then free up the money so they can start getting paid. So we need to go ahead and approve a implementation planning grant submitted by Dewberry, which creates a restore coordinator position and also funds them.
So
That's
moved.
the first action.
Second.
Have a motion in 2 seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Then the second thing is, at some point, we do need to create a restore council because we are taking the leadership, the guidance of Dewberry. Other counties, when we first started this 2 years ago, had these immense county councils, you may recall. We were going to have a 20-member council, then it was 14-member. And so now, you know, we have the ability to shrink that down. I haven't fully vetted everything, so I mean, I will say that the county commission has responsibility for 5 seats. We anticipate 5 seats. The city of Apalachicola and the city of Carabel would each have a single seat. I've spoken to both cities about their representations. They haven't yet announced their intentions yet. Brian, I guess I'm saying out loud is that I will get a final deal for the membership with you all at the next meeting, but we can go ahead and submit the planning grant, and we have the structure moving forward.
That's correct, and I agree with your assessment on that. We're not ready to move forward on naming our Restore Council, but we do need to move forward on your stuff and his stuff. And one other thing, Alec, is I appreciate you willing, as you retire and Michael's taking over the Director of Administrative Services for us, I do appreciate you standing forward and working as our Restore Coordinator, because you've been in the community for 25 plus years. You know the different dynamics of our county. I think you've got a good idea of what the priorities will be at some point, and I want to thank you for stepping forward and taking that in your early retirement there and moving us forward on this scope or this project right here.
Well, I appreciate that, and this is a challenge in a new direction, and it's only a, it's a part-time thing. It's something that I hope I can accomplish and meet the goals of the community as well as my own personal goals. So.
Now, Alan, have you contacted the city of Apalachicola and the city
Yes.
of Carabel and
Yes.
asked them to have their members?
Yes.
Have they responded to you?
Neither one has responded in writing. Now, the city of Carabel has, I spoke to the mayor, she's in the audience right now, and they're going to meet tonight, I believe. Thursday night, okay, Thursday night, because it's all
So by
right.
the time it comes back around, we'll
Right.
have all the members there.
That's correct.
So, yeah, because you got non-governmental, we don't
Right.
have anybody in there for
Right,
more,
right.
but we
And
have
that's-
questions about.
And that was a general term. It could be community interest commissioners, that can change.
Okay, I need some clarification. The clerk asked, did we appoint you as the Restore Coordinator in that motion we made?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They did.
Yeah,
That was
that
their
was
intention.
all of it.
Okay, we're good.
Like I said. Okay.